Hey everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today we are going to talk about NOMOS Glashütte, or NOMOS, as part of our Watches and Wonders 2021 coverage. So NOMOS is a brand mostly associated with Bauhaus-style design on their dials. It's a German company, and I think they've gotten a lot of attention lately. They have a number of lines. They start at a very affordable end and then move up to not particularly expensive, but depending what you want, they've got a few different flavors to choose from. I don't think they really revealed anything revolutionary at Watches and Wonders, but they did do a number of line updates, which are of note, and we will go through. I want to start with the NOMOS Club Campus. Now, this is a watch line that very much targets students, high school students, college students, and what they've done is they've revealed two new colors. They have a gray dial watch and an orange dial watch. These come in 36mm and 38mm. And to walk through the specs really quickly on the watches, now, price-wise, the 36mm sells for $1,500 US, and the 38mm is $1,650. Size-wise, the 36mm diameter watch has a height of 8.2mm. The watch they brand as the 38mm is actually a 38.5mm diameter and has a height of 8.5mm, so a little bit thicker than the 36 variant. 100 meters of water resistance. Both variants of this watch use the caliber alpha. That is a manual wind movement. It has a power reserve of up to 43 hours. This line of NOMOS watches uses a closed caseback, and that's part of their marketing strategy. If you go to the NOMOS website, you'll see just how geared this product line is towards students. It really emphasizes the idea of these watches as gifts. It talks about things like college exams, life milestones, and obviously at this low of a price point, they're really taking a page out of the Rolex playbook, in my view, and emphasizing, hey, if you have a major life event, you should celebrate it by a watch. And in this case, it's much more affordable than a Rolex, so let's target people who are having earlier life milestones like passing the ACTs or graduating high school or graduating college, rather than those sort of professional milestones that Rolex is more the domain of celebrating. And as part of that strategy, they also specify that it's free engraving. So this is really, I think, quite clever for NOMOS to say, hey, we've got this closed case back. There's plenty of room on it. Let's put a message, something personalized, and there's no extra cost to you. So parents, do this, get this, and celebrate with this. And on the student angle, all of the watches, even a color like gray, you look at it and you see the color on the hands that they employ and such. These are more playful than some of their other watches. They're designed to appeal to younger people, so they're more colorful, more personality in these watches than what you might think of as staid Bauhaus designs, which are usually just very white and black and basic. The dial itself is interesting aside from the color. They run with a upper half, sort of above the 3 and the 9, you see Arabic numerals, and then below the 3 and the 9, they employ Roman numerals. So again, more of that playfulness coming in on these particular watches. NOMOS also had a couple of Tangente line announcements. The first I want to touch on is a limited model celebrating Doctors Without Borders. I believe they're donating 100 euros per watch sale to Doctors Without Borders. It's a run limited to 2,021 units. There's not a lot about the watch visually that screams Doctors Without Borders. If you look down at the 6 o'clock position on the dial, there is where normally the Made in Germany branding would be, is a Doctors Without Borders message instead. This also has a closed caseback, so when you flip it over, there's Doctors Without Borders engraved branding in the caseback itself. Otherwise, I think this watch is pretty much what you've come to expect out of the NOMOS Tangente line. It's a fairly popular line of theirs. The price on this unit is $2,030 US. In terms of specifications, once again, we've got the caliber alpha, so it is a manual wind watch. As I noted back with the Club Campus watches, 43-hour power reserve. Size of this watch, diameter is actually 37.5 millimeters. It's got a height of 6.7 millimeters. This is not as water resistant as the Club Campus watches. This is only 30 meters, so it's essentially a splash-proof watch. You wouldn't want to go swimming in it. And otherwise, I suppose the highlight is the red 12 marker on the dial, which red being associated with Doctors Without Borders and medical rescue sorts of things. NOMOS did also reveal a new color option for the Tangente Neomatic 41. It's now available in midnight blue. It's got a Luminova green date marker. NOMOS has a pretty clever date display they like to use. It goes around the perimeter of the watch, and there are a couple of pips, and whatever day is between the pips is the day of the month that is currently active. This watch is $4,100. It is an automatic movement, not a manual wind like we've been talking about. This is actually their caliber DUW6101. It has a power reserve of 42 hours. Size-wise, the diameter of this watch is 40.5 millimeters with a height of 7.8 millimeters. This has 50 meters of water resistance, so it's between splash-proof and swim-proof. They list it as suitable for showering. Unlike the watches we've talked about prior, this does have a display case back, which does make a lot of sense. Nomos is recognized as one of the lower cost brands that has some nice finishing on their movements. They're very attractive to look at. So there's often a favoring by many people to get a display case back Nomos model. Obviously, that doesn't work so well when they're pushing the engraving options. But on these higher end movements where people are usually already into watches, it does make a lot of sense strategically to offer the choice. The dial is busier than some of the other dials we've looked at, mostly because of the incorporation of the day of the month display. But as usual, we've got the small seconds, which is something Nomos always likes to do. Arabic numerals designating set positions on the clock itself. And other than that, it's what you come to expect from Nomos. Their last Watches and Wonders 2021 announcement was an update to the Metro Neomatic 41. In some ways, this watch looks similar to a Tangente, but if you compare them side by side, you start to see a number of differences. We still have the date display around the diameter of the watch with the pips showing you what day it is. However, the hands are a little bit different. They taper to a finer point on both the hour and minute. We do still have the small seconds. We have a number of numeric markers around the watch. Overall, there's more text on this watch than there is on the Tangente. There is a little bit of color besides the date display. The Neomatic is in gold on this white dial. So otherwise, you've got the black text like you've come to expect from Nomos. Once again, we're talking an automatic movement. Once again, we're talking specifically about the DUW6101 with 42 hours of power reserve. This also has 50 meters of water resistance, just like the Tangente, so it's safe for showering and not much else. Size-wise, the diameter is 40.5 millimeters and the height is 9.1 millimeters. And just like the Tangente we talked about, this also has a display case back. So what do I think of these watches? Nomos is a brand I find very interesting and also a brand I have been completely incapable of getting into. Part of it is I want to like Bauhaus designs and I just can't bring myself to like them enough to buy any of them. And while I appreciate their more creative offerings as well, it doesn't seem to, for me, to fit anything in my collection that really appeals. Overall, I like the idea of the club campus. I think it's clever. I think the blend of Roman numerals and Arabic numerals is a bit gimmicky for me. But again, when you're going for playfulness, that and additional sort of shocking color options work really well for what's going on there. I suppose of all of these that I've looked at, the Tangente is my favorite, specifically the Doctors Without Borders one, because I like the cleaner look without the date display. I think the date display mechanism is really cool. I like that they aren't just doing a window in the dial, but are actually using something and taking full advantage of the diameter of that watch. Nomos watches are seen to run big by people. Like if you buy a 38 millimeter watch, it feels like it's bigger than 38 millimeters. And obviously it's whatever size it is. It can't be any bigger. The reason why they tend to feel bigger depends on who you ask. Some of it comes down to the bezel and just how far out the sapphire goes on the watch. And I think that is definitely part of it, but I also think it's the fact that generally there's a lot of white space towards the center of these watches, and it's when you move out to the dial that you start to get all that text. So your eyes are drawn to the edges of the watch, and so I think it just makes it look bigger to you, because that's where everything to read is just out on the sides. But again, it's a design aesthetic that is going to appeal to some people and not others. I'd say if that's a big concern of yours, try a smaller one on first and see if that makes you happy before immediately maybe jumping to a 41 millimeter because you normally buy 41 millimeter diameter watches. You might want to try out a 38 and see if it suits you better. I do think the Midnight Blue Tangente looks nice. I like the incorporation of blue and green. I've seen someone refer to that as the Seahawks. Because of the football team color scheme, and it's very similar to that. So I imagine Seahawk fans might like this watch. I don't know about any rivals going for it or not. As for the Nomos Neomatic 41 announcement they had, I think that's gotten the most attention, at least from what I've read of their Watches and Wonders announcements. It's also the one I like the least. I think the dial is way too busy for my tastes. It's just got way too much text, way too small. I saw someone in a comment section, I think it was on Hodinkee, say that they thought it looked like a meat thermometer. And I agree, especially with the little orange pip for which I think the orange pips work for the date display, but just with all these other numbers going around, you've got this 5, 10, all the way up to 60 going around at various points on the dial. And it's so close to the dates that, yeah, it does sort of feel like I'm trying to figure out whether or not my stakes are done. Given that it's over $4,000, there's just no way I could pull the trigger on this the way it looks myself. But if you really are into this German aesthetic that they go with at NOMOS, this might be up your alley. So what are your all thoughts about NOMOS's announcements for Watches and Wonders? Are there any of these watches you particularly like? Are there any that you particularly dislike? Comment below. I'd love to read your thoughts on it. And other than that, if you want to be notified when I have a new video, go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click the little like thumbs up thing, and it supposedly helps somehow. I'm not quite sure how, but that gets into analytics and algorithms, and I'm sure YouTube knows what they're doing. Other than that, I'll just say have a great day, everybody. Take care.